Evening. I want to recap a little bit, correct a few errors we made this morning in the release early this morning. So I'm just going to go through the whole release here, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. On January 2nd, 2021, officers with the Lindale Police Department responded to several calls for service regarding a dark-colored Volkswagen Jetta near the intersection of FM 849 and Interstate 20 near the Hideaway subdivision west of Lindale. He'd been reported to be displaying a firearm out the sunroof of the vehicle. Lindale police officers, we first reported this morning that they got in pursuit. They never laid eyes on the vehicle. They were headed to the area but never observed the vehicle. A few minutes later, around 7:30 p.m., a Smith County Sheriff's deputy observed the suspect vehicle in the parking lot of a Chevron convenience store at 303 South Main Street in Lindale. At this time, the Smith County deputy attempted to stop the suspect, but he fled at a high rate of speed down Interstate 20 and FM 16 and several different roads, coming back out 849 to Interstate 20. And by that time, he was joined in the pursuit by the troopers from the DPS. He exited Interstate 20 at 271, went towards Glaywater, and then exit onto 757 to head toward the Starville community. They reached speeds in excess of 100 miles an hour, and believe it or not, the Volkswagen Jetta had one donut or the little spare tire on it, which finally gave way at the intersection of FM 757 and Highway 16, which caused him to go, as y'all saw out there earlier today, through the neighbor's yard next to the church. And he was rammed at that time by a DPS unit, which we believe that numerous of airbags in the vehicle and the Volkswagen deployed, and so the shotgun was left behind. We believe it helped dislodge the shotgun from him being able to get out with the shotgun. A perimeter was established with local law enforcement. We had K9s and drones deployed in that area for several hours. We put deputies in the woods, and I've since found out we found one of his shoes or a boot he was wearing, which was outside the perimeter that we had set up. So we believed after about 2 hours, we knew he'd been outside our perimeter. So we then just monitored the roadways up until early this morning. This started off this morning at 9:21 when Smith County Sheriff's Office 911 dispatchers received the call from, I believe, from the pastor's wife of the subject being in the church, and the first shooting had happened at that time. And it's been reported to me, I haven't verified it for sure yet, but it was reported that you could hear gunshots, the dispatchers could hear gunshots in the background, which leads us to believe it was the gunshots as he was exiting the church when he was chasing another one of the victims around the corner, the one that had sustained non-life-threatening injuries. What we believe happened this morning is the suspect backtracked his way after deputies left there. He came back, and in order to get away out of the cold, and broke a window and entered the church, and was waiting. It was still in the bathroom of the church with the door closed when the pastor or his wife, opened the door and met with him. The pastor was armed and was able to use his handgun to draw down on him. However, there was some confusion during that time. He made the suspect lay down on the floor. The pastor got distracted with his wife, talking to his wife, and the suspect lunged at him and was able to take his firearm out of his hand. As I just said a little bit earlier, as the suspect was leaving the church, the fellowship hall portion of the church, he was shooting at another victim, the one with the non-life-threatening injuries. As he was leaving the church, he turned right to go in front of the sanctuary, And he had a firearm. He was armed himself, but would never had the opportunity to use it. But his injuries are all consistent with him running away from the suspect who was pursuing him. The suspect later took one of the victim's vehicles, a 2018 GMC pickup, which thank God was had the latest technology, had OnStar on it, and which was able to assist us in locating the suspect, getting officers out in front of him on the interstate, and then at the point that we got confirmation the officers were behind him, he saw him and got in a short pursuit. We then had OnStar shut the vehicle down. So, arrest affidavits were presented to 241st State District Judge Jack Skeen this afternoon late. Judge Skeen issued warrants charging 21-year-old Mytrez, spelled M-Y-T-R-E-Z, Deonte, D-E-U-N-T-E, Woolen, W-O-O-L-E-N, with 3 counts. 1, aggravated assault, use or exhibit a deadly weapon, a second-degree felony. Bond was set at $750,000. Aggravated assault causes serious bodily injury, a second-degree felony, bond $750,000. And 1 count of capital murder, a first-degree felony, bond at $2 million. Justice of the Peace, Precinct Number 2, Judge Andy Dunklin held an inquest and ordered an autopsy on the victim, which has been performed by local pathologists here in Smith County. And that's pretty much all I've got right now, except one other thing. The deceased, we are going to identify, give the identity of the deceased, Pastor Mark Allen McWilliams, 62 of Frankston. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Sheriff, can you slowly spell the name of the suspect, please, for us?
Okay, the spelling, we're going to give you a press release, just like I've got here, as you leave the courtroom here. Or do you need it right now to send out?
It would help to have.
Okay, okay. Mytrez, M like Mary, Y, T-R-E-Z. Deonte, D-E-U-N-T-E. Last name Woolen, W-William, O-O-L-E-N. Of Marshall.
And where is he located right now?
He's in the Smith County Jail.
Okay, so he was already brought back to Smith County.
We had detectives on the way towards Marshall before he was ever caught. Yes, ma'am.
Does the suspect have a criminal record?
I can't go into releasing criminal records. If you can get that from your own independent information, we're not allowed to release criminal histories.
Prior to the initial high-speed chase,
He was known to law enforcement. I can't say that much. I'm sorry.
So I was going to ask, prior to last night's high-speed chase, was there already a warrant out for his arrest?
Not to my knowledge. But let me back up a little bit. Before the call came into Lindale PD at about 7:15, 7:20, just prior to that, we're going backwards and finding out from Marshall PD that he was involved or was a suspect in a drive-by shooting of a residence and then shot at another victim with the shotgun, we believe to be the shotgun that we have recovered. So it was a criminal episode from the time he left Marshall at about 5:20, 5:30 yesterday evening till he was apprehended this afternoon.
So just to get a correct timeline on this, his car came to a stop near the church, correct, or closer to that neighborhood?
It was, he went straight through the T intersection. He veered to the right in front of the residence, striking the part of the porch, going toward the church, towards the parking lot, towards the building. And that time he was hit by a DPS unit and knocked into the wooded area adjoining the church parking lot.
And so from there he runs into the woods?
He runs into the dense woods right there.
And then the perimeter is set up, and then at some point, your deputies are searching the area, you don't find him. And
Right.
at some point-
The K-9 got on a tracked the suspect toward a creek, and that's where we found some of the footwear, or either a shoe or a boot belonging to what we believe belonged to the suspect.
Yeah. And then at some point, he finds his way back to the church, breaks the window, and that's how he got to
Yes,
the weapon.
yes.
As the sheriff of this county, what's your reaction to this, how this is all played out, and an innocent man, a pastor who's loved by many people, lost his life today?
Well, here in Smith County, we hope things like that, if they got to happen somewhere else. But just fortunately, it did happen. But we're very fortunate to have the law enforcement that we have here, the citizens we have here to report things like that and have it come to a quick conclusion. It's relatively quick, even though it's still in the infancy stage or incipient stage of the investigation right now. It's still a lot of work to be done. This is when the work really starts. We'll be working on this for weeks. And when we have a homicide, especially like this, it's all hands on deck. We don't send 2 detectives out with crime scene. We send everybody we got. And that's what we attribute to having over a 100% homicide clearance rate since January 2013.
So Larry, the black Jetta, was that owned by the suspect?
That's still part of the investigation, Alan. The Jetta had fictitious plates on it, or plates off of another vehicle that didn't fit that vehicle. So we're still looking into that. The vehicle originated in Illinois. It's the last place it was registered, and that was 2 years ago. But it had plates like it was on a Lexus, I believe, or something like that.
At any point last night, did your deputies check the church?
I'm sure they checked the church and the surrounding area immediately. Yeah. That would have been one of the first things you do, check the outbuildings, especially, but we know from information that we have now that he came back later. And I will say, I'm not going to say he made a confession. A confession to me is like when you confess in church, that's 100% truth. I've never, in my 44 years in law enforcement, believe I've got a confession from a defendant. He is making statements that we need to pursue this investigation, but that's where I leave it at that.
Do you have a description of him?
Larry can get it for you before we leave.
To be clear, the time of the shooting, the service had not started, right? The church service had not started.
To my knowledge, there were only 4 people there, I believe, when this happened. There was a pastor, his wife, and 2 other white males.
Is the timeline of when he broke back in the church still just somewhere between 10:30 at night and 9:20 in the morning?
It's going to be after 10:30 at night because troopers were still there working the crash scene up until about 2 a.m.
Can that be narrowed down at all?
What difference does it make? You know, he came back and broke into church, but it was after 2 a.m., somewhere between 2 a.m. and 9 a.m. And if we ever able to tie that down with him in a statement, we maybe can get it to you, but, you know, that might be something we're able to tie it up later, but that's going to be something he's got to give us the information on. We do know he wasn't there until after 2 a.m.
Is there any word on the condition of the other person that was shot?
He's out of surgery. He has wounds through the shoulders that nicked an artery and shot in the back.
And the suspect that was shot, do you know?
The suspect, that's another thing, and I'm glad you brought that up. The suspect, we still unsure. The wound, to me, from my past experience, looks like it could have been his hand at the time of either him shooting a gun or tussling over the gun that went off. Looks more like a burn to me instead of a through-and-through shot.
But he's been released from the hospital. He's now in the jail.
He was released from the hospital relatively quick, and he's been here behind us at our admin office of the sheriff's office for quite some time, but he's in the jail now.
Now, there was another person at the church that received some kind of injury. Can you talk about that?
The other person that's received an injury was from what we believe trying to run from a fall, injured a shoulder, but it was non-gunshot related.
Trying to flee from
Yes.
the gunman.
Right.
And sir, you said he lost sight of his shotgun when he was ran by a DPS truck.
Well, that's what we believe. When he was rammed by the DPS unit, the side and front airbags went off, deployed, which we believe probably dislodged the shotgun from him because he had it when he was in Lindale and was able to stick it out the window. which was reported by at least 3 different separate complainants.
And you touched on this as well, but just to confirm, after shooting Pastor McWilliams, he used Pastor McWilliams' firearm to shoot the other victim?
Yes, yes.
Do we have any idea why he went on?
And shot at Pastor McWilliams' wife, but wasn't successful.
Do we know how many times the victims were shot?
We're not going to go into details of that. Yes, sir.
Do we have any idea why he went on this violent rampage? Did he offer any insight on possible motives?
That's still unknown. That's completely unknown.
You said he waved the gun at people in Lindale
Mhm.
after the Marshall incident. Was there any rhyme or reason? Was he just driving in a parking lot doing, or do we know if there was any reason why he would have been waving the gun?
There's really no, I don't even believe he knew the victim that he shot at the individual. I don't think he even knew him. And it's unclear, Alan, if he even knew the people that lived in the house he shot at. It appears to be all random.
Was the pastor's wife one of the ones that was injured? You saying?
She's the one that had the fall injury. Anything else?
The pastor had a gun. I'm assuming he had a carry permit or whatever.
I'm not sure. That's something that will come out during the investigation, but
Okay.
we're not sure at this point.